What's going on, man? Welcome back to the basement. I'm Ron, and today we got a special one. We got Matt Harmon from Reception Perception. We're going to break down 6 must-draft wide receivers. These are Matt Harmon's guys in terms of scheme fit, in terms of how much you like them as prospects. And then I'm going to pick his brain a little bit on some fun landing spots down the stretch. It should be a great all-in-one full wide receiver landscape video for everyone out there that is in their Dynasty rookie drafts right now. So with that being said, how's it going, Matt Harmon?
Ron, appreciate you having me, man. Yeah, this is a fun time because, you get to kind of talk about these guys as ideas, right? As individual prospects. And then I love the post-draft analysis even more because I'm such a scheme dork. I'm such like an alignment kind of hardo about like guys getting in the right roles. That's really going to matter. That's going to dictate really their success or failure at the NFL level. Shoot, even the guys that are, in the room with them, not to derail us right away, but we were talking a little bit about Rome Odunze and before the show. I had somebody ask me this morning, would you rather have Rome Odunze or Emeka Egbuka in Dynasty? I'm like, damn, you want to get off Rome Odunze to get onto the Rome Odunze of this year in this year's class, like the guy playing behind 2 former Pro Bowl receivers. So it's just once we know where the guys are playing, the picture becomes so much more clear.
Yeah, and I like chopping it up with you as well because it's not as simple as sorting by projected targets, of just like that we're getting a lot of, and I think this is a good segue into our first topic of your first must draft receiver, Travis Hunter, of Brian Thomas Jr.'s there. And it's like, there's this panic of any room a wide receiver goes to, if there's a top dog already there, all of a sudden their appeal evaporates. But this is somebody that before the draft, we were expecting to go to the Browns and have, one of Shedeur Sanders or Dylan Gabriel or Joe Flacco or Kenny Pickett at quarterback. And it's like, sure, is he the top of the wide receiver room next to Jerry Jeudy in that scenario? Sure. But the quarterback efficiency is brutal, and that would be really bad for his high-end upside. And I would just rather be in a good offense than, this is something my accounting teacher used to say in high school, than being, the best-looking guy in a Walmart on the Cleveland Browns. So I'm curious, what do you like about the fit with Travis Hunter on the Jaguars? How do you kind of see him playing off of Brian Thomas Jr.? And I'll kind of give you the floor because Travis Hunter's been my 102 the entire time, or not the entire time, but probably this last month or so. And I can't shut up about him.
Yeah, look, I'm with you that the only appealing thing about that Browns landing spot in terms of Travis Hunter, had he gone there, would be that they obviously viewed him as a clear wide receiver first. I knew for a fact throughout the process, even before it became like seemingly obvious that they were going to take him, that Andrew Berry was obsessed with this guy. I had a buddy who went to Colorado's pro day, was texting me pictures of Andrew Berry in like a deep squat, like watching Travis Hunter run routes. He was obsessed with the idea of him as a wide receiver. Well, we get that same appeal in Jacksonville because I believe, and they've sort of said this as well, that they view him as a wide receiver first. And like, he's going to play some defensive back. He should play some defensive back. He wants to be that difference making type of player, but yeah, as a wide receiver from a landing spot perspective, this is so much better. Like Liam Cohen ran a great offense last year. It was one of my favorite offenses to watch. Top 5 in passing success rate, top 5 in overall EPA per play. And they obviously had some great players there. They had a much better offensive line than what Jacksonville currently has, but still the ideas and the concepts were really good. I believe he's going to bring a lot of that here to Jacksonville. So, and whatever we think about Trevor Lawrence, he's certainly an upgrade over, anything that was going on in Cleveland. You rattled off the names there. So this offense last year with Liam Cohen had a wide receiver 2 in points per game in Chris Godwin, a wide receiver 9 in Mike Evans in points per game. And those guys were working really well in tandem together. I see no reason why Brian Thomas Jr. and Travis Hunter can't work in tandem together. And look, like Hunter is just an incredible wide receiver. He's one of my favorite wide receivers I've ever evaluated, period, full stop. He has a 97th percentile success rate versus zone coverage, in reception perception, 97th percentile success rate versus press. In terms of power 5 prospects I've charted that have faced press on more than 22% of their routes, he has the highest success rate versus press among that cohort. So he also has rare ball skills. He rarely goes down after the catch. I mean, Ron, the conflict that these two guys are going to put defensive coordinators in is unbelievable. So, who's the 1, who's the 2? We'll figure that out throughout the course of the season, but I think there's more than enough room for both of these guys to eat in that offense.
Yeah, exactly. Like, this is a really good player. And like you said, with reception perception, the all green route tree.
Yeah,
I think you comped him to prime Odell Beckham Jr. as like in terms of like his explosive, the way that he makes plays. And I do want to pick your brain when you're watching the film, because the story goes that a lot of these plays, he's just looking to the sideline and they're just telling him what route to run, which is just like pretty mind boggling. Like, of course, he's not playing in the SEC, so it's not super impressive against the Kansas State, but still he's running routes on the fly. This is also a receiver room. Maybe you've charted a couple of these guys, but there's NFL names in here, right? You have Jimmy Horn, you have the kid Webster, whatever. What did it look like? And I heard as well, like there was a lot of screen game too that I think hurt, his numbers, which I know you're not the craziest guy about yards per route run, but I think that was hurting his yards per route run. And there were a lot of routes where he's probably just standing around as there's like a screen to Jimmy Horn or something.
Yeah, great point. And a couple things there. Yeah, I mean, yards per route run's a good stat. I just think sometimes that it leaves out certain pieces of context, and it obviously is affected by what's happening in the offense and who else you're playing with. Like it's insane to think that your teammates don't affect your yards per route run, and certain things within the offense don't affect that as well. It's a good stat. It's just not fully wide receiver isolating. And that's a great example too. Just also how some places chart it or collect yards per route run, like what they count as a route is worth debating. Like I talked about this in Travis Hunter's reception perception profile, that there are a lot of plays in that Colorado offense where he's running what I called like BS performative hitches, where he's just like on the backside of plays and he just runs like not even a full curl route, just a little like, dude, like he's not in the progression of the play at all. And a big part of that is, for people that don't know the backstory of Travis Hunter, obviously we know he's a two-way player. He won the Heisman, the whole deal. He was never going to offensive meetings, or rarely going to offensive meetings at Colorado, which, by the way, it's nutso that he had that kind of production as a wide receiver and was not in offensive meetings, not fully involved, like not fully baked into that side of the football. So yeah, they basically had like a package of plays that were the Travis Hunter plays, but because Travis Hunter's so good, that basically became the entire offense. But in order to conserve his body, like, yeah, they had him out there on the backside just kind of running these like performative routes that, for me, I don't even like, I'm not charting the success rate of the wander around routes, like those plays just kind of get thrown out for what I'm doing. But sometimes in yards per route run, those do get included. And to be fair, there's a couple times where Shedeur Sanders goes into creation mode and he gets involved into a play where he wasn't supposed to be involved in said play. So he does make like for a complicated sort of film evaluation because of that. But man, when he is actually tasked with running real deal big boy routes, so many impressive dig routes over the course of his reception perception sample. He runs those at a really, really high level. Yeah, that prime Odell Beckham comparison, it's the separation ability, even if he's not yet an elite route runner, because there's a difference between being an elite separator and an elite route runner, and he's sort of the perfect example of that. Like technically, there are still things he can tighten up, which there's no reason to think he won't do that as the more he invests time-wise at the wide receiver position. But it's the elite separation, it's the ability off the line of scrimmage against press, it's the rare ball skills, it's the fact that he never goes down on first contact, or rarely goes down on first contact. That does sound an awful lot like Odell Beckham's rookie and early career to me. Yeah,
the stat I've been running with is just like, at the catch point, he has a 63.3% contested catch rate over his entire career. That's in the 95th percentile of all wide receivers I have charted, and then 94th percentile missed tackles forced per reception. So he gets open at will. He's amazing at the catch point, amazing after the catch. And I do want to tie a bow on this just in terms of, I am curious. I don't want to put you on the gun in terms of, are you taking him as early as 102? But I am curious how you are. Because this is outside of
put the gun out. Yes, the answer is yes. I would do it. No question about it.
100%. Me too. I think people, I've been getting like people in the comments. It's a very polarizing player because of the corner stuff. And this is of course outside of the realm of, charting the routes and everything, but it is an interesting conversation of how much corner will he play? Will his body hold up? And I will say, I don't want to get too in the weeds on predicting an injury. I don't want to get too in the weeds of predicting exactly how much he's playing. But the way that I've been treating it is, one, it's an offensive staff. Liam Cohen comes in. The price they paid, they need him to play wide receiver. Because as of right now, and I think it's an interesting topic for reception perception, is that like wide receivers having this renaissance where they're now a premium position. For a second there, Jamar Chase was the highest non-paid quarterback, which is a big deal. So they need him to play wide receiver for the amount that they gave up. It seems like that's the way that it's trending as well. And then you also have this correlated bet where the better he is at wide receiver, the tougher it'll be for them to justify not having him play more wide receiver. So how do you kind of weigh that? Like, what do you see as like the range of outcomes? Like, because I've been saying too, I even think even if it's like, I think we'll see the defense go away as time goes on, just naturally. And we're going to get all, guys like me, we're going to love his yards per out run in year one because when he's on the field, he'll get used.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, year two, we get reports he's going to be a full-time wide receiver. He has yards per out run as a rookie, and he's getting in all these lists, next to Puka, next to Odell Beckham Jr. And then all of a sudden, he's a 1-2 turn pick in startups. He's a round 2 redraft pick, and, you smash your 102 value.
Yeah, it's a great way of painting a very, very nice picture there. I will say just – remember at the combine, I remember being at the combine, and at that time it was really kind of widely accepted that he would be a corner first and moonlight at the wide receiver position. And my thought then was, well, we'll see about that. Like, we'll see, because like you said, wide receiver is a premium position. They're making more money than cornerbacks, which is a conversation like we could have if that's smart. Like the guys that you want to stop the wide receivers, these high paid players, like the pay is not equal. There's like a $10 million gap at the top of the market. Again, totally separate conversation, but it is one that people should have. And just how incredible he was as a wide receiver in his just 3-game early reception perception sample. I was like, I don't know. We'll see. Like as time goes on, people might view it differently. And it feels like the tide started to turn soon after that. And then now it's kind of, I think he's going to play mostly offense, because it's also worth saying too, wide receiver is a more stable position year to year than cornerback is. Like Sauce Gardner a couple years ago, like consensus best cornerback in the league. And last year he's coming off a very disappointing season. Like he can probably bounce back, but like Jaylin Ramsey's another one that at times he's been the best corner in the league. And at other times he's been maybe like a really good player, but it's just very volatile. It's a hard position to play. And the proof of that is like, go watch Travis Hunter as a corner. I think he's a great corner, but man, I've charted wide receivers like Alec Iomanner, having great games against Travis Hunter, because it's just a really hard position to play. It's a really, really hard position to play. And even if you have a good one, like I said, there can be that up and down volatility. Whereas with wide receiver, like the top players are usually the top players every single season, unless they have a quarterback injury or something like that. So from a performance standpoint, guys like Justin Jefferson, they hit the ground running. They're the best players in the league, and he's just going to be the best player in the league, one of the best wide receivers in the league every single season. So I think that's a big reason too why they're going to focus on wide receiver, because it's just, number one, they still got to make Trevor Lawrence look good. And number two, like I think it's a more valuable position at this point.
Yeah, and I assume that Gladstone knows this. He's a young guy who leans into analytics. And like you said, like I'm a Jets fan. We had to strip Sauce from his name. He was Ahmad Gardner last year.
Right, So you can give a great testimony to what we just talked about.
He was awful. Trey McBride was tossing him into the stands in that game. And then, like you said, with Justin Jefferson, we've yet to see a single year where like, I don't know if he still has it this year. It's just He's been Jefferson no matter the quarterback or whatever. But let's get into your next must-draft receiver here. We're going a little bit deeper. We wanted to start up with a blue-chip guy, especially because I think it's a great conversation with Travis Hunter. But who do you got next? All right, now before we get into Matt Harmon's second must-draft wide receiver, I wanted to tell you guys about a couple of things. The first one being I am launching a new channel, the RS Dynasty channel. Moving forward, all of my Dynasty fantasy football content will be over on the RS Dynasty channel. Make sure you go subscribe. I'll have a link down below in the description and at the top of the comments down below. This is it. Dynasty Fantasy Football on the Ron Stewart channel. This is the last ever video. Moving forward, they will all be on the RS Dynasty channel. The reasoning for that is I would just prefer things being separate so that people who are more casual and come in the summer aren't turned off by my Dynasty videos in the offseason. And it just kind of gives me two separate avenues where in season I'll feel some pressure where it's like, man, I got to just post redraft right now. That's what's hot in the algorithm. And it precludes me from talking about Dynasty too. So this now makes everything separate. Everybody's happy. I've been stubborn on it for a while, but now is better than never or later or whatever. So right now we are making the RS Dynasty channel so that next offseason I thank my past self. Now, one other thing I wanted to talk about, and that is here in the basement, we are looking for some help this summer. Now, these are paid jobs. probably not like full-time on salary, but more like contracting or per project type of gigs. I'm looking for help across the board here. I have a bunch of jobs or roles listed on this Google form. I'll have it linked in the description and the comment section down below. I don't know that I'll have people hired for roles in all of these different job listings, or it's really just going to be whoever I think fits most and whoever I think has the best work, and probably 2 or 3 people to help me out during the summer when it's the busy season. The roles I'm looking for, they're listed here, but I'm looking for someone that's good with websites. I would love to make a website that hosts my rankings, so it's not just a Google sheet, but it's something bigger and better than that and looks pretty. Somebody as well for graphic design. That's a little bit of overlapping skill sets, so you can check that off as well, where again, I want somebody that can help me with like overlays or graphics, maybe thumbnails every now and then, or, you know, making this website look good. Then we also have video editing. You guys know most of my videos, I either edit myself or don't really edit at all, but there's going to be videos here and there where it's high effort or in season where it's a turnaround thing where I need a top 24 running back rankings video. This would be somebody that's good with editing, can flip videos quick. Or if you're more of like a fancy editor, I would love a per project guy where if I do a draft video with my home league buddies and we go down the shore, I could fly you out, you record it, edit it, and make it look good. And then the last one, and this one's more of a cherry on top, but somebody who's good with merch. I would love to make some merch for you guys from a distribution standpoint, from just a creation standpoint, someone that's good with that line of business. But that's all. I'll have all of those linked down below. The link to subscribing to the new Dynasty channel, and then also if you're interested with helping me out on the channel. Again, these are paid positions per project or like freelancing gigs, something among those lines. Let me know if you're interested. Use the Google form. My business email as well is I think it's ronstewart.business@gmail.com. If it isn't, that'll be linked down below as well. But let's get back to the video and see what Matt Harmon has to say.
Yeah, next we'll go TCU wide receiver Jack Bech, and he's obviously now playing with the Las Vegas Raiders, which, again, when I was thinking about Jack Bech as a prospect, I never really kind of considered him landing with the Raiders, but as soon as I saw it happen, it was kind of like, oh, yeah, this makes a lot of sense, because if you go back, like, and by the way, this player and this season is charted in the reception perception database because I'm a sick pup, I guess. But Jordan Matthews, when he was originally drafted in 2014 by Chip Kelly, head coach of the Philadelphia Eagles at the time, he was like a 6'3", over 210-pound wide receiver. And they basically ran him out of the slot on, I think, 97% of his sampled snaps in reception perception. Was like one of the original big slot receivers. I think that's probably the way they view Jack Bech, who's a much better player than Jordan Matthews was for sure, and also can play a little bit outside. Like, I don't want to pigeonhole him as just a slot player because, yeah, like you mentioned, it's Big 12, it's not SEC. But that being said, I do this time of year, like the SEC honks are all up in my mentions about level of competition. Trust me, folks, I have charted some terrible SEC cornerback play as well. So, like, just because the guy's playing in the SEC does not mean he's not going to be working at the local CVS or something in a calendar year's time. But 91st percentile success rate versus press for Jack Bech. He is a great player on basically every route except the corner and the 9. Like, he's not a vertical threat. He's probably not going to play X receiver in the league, at least on the majority of his snaps, because he can't like stack players and win with speed downfield. There's a reason he didn't run a 40 time, but he catches everything. He breaks tackles after the catch. He actually went down on 15%, went down on first contact on 15% of his in-space attempts charted for reception perception, which is, I mean, that's outrageous. Like, so, you know, again, 85% of the time he's breaking at least one tackle. He's really tough to bring down. Great set of hands. Didn't drop a pass in his 8 games charted. I was a huge fan of Jack Bech in the process. And again, I think him working as kind of that big slot receiver in Chip Kelly's offense makes so much sense for him. So, you know, year one, Jacoby Myers is still there. Jacoby Myers only played in the slot on 33% of his snaps last year. He's not a slot only guy. He's a pretty good man coverage beater as well. So there's opportunity year one for Jack Bech to get on the field and be one of the top 2 receivers on this team, which has a good veteran quarterback in Geno Smith.
I like that call. He's somebody I'm trying to get more into now because I'm definitely a bit of a numbers nerd. I'm a bit of a spreadsheet guy. And you look early, he didn't really produce a ton, but I mean, he has this 1 year where he outproduced in terms of yards. He outproduced neighbors, Brian Thomas Jr. in that offense as a freshman. And like you said, like the versatility is weird. And this is what I wanted to pick your brain on of like, so you mentioned Jacoby Myers. I've gotten questions of a little bit of concern with how he meshes with Brock Bowers, right? Like he played, I was shocked to see, I think when he was a freshman, he played 25% of his snaps as an inline tight end, which is like, I don't even know what to make of that. Where I do love the versatility though, where he's playing 25% in line. He has a season as high as 95% in the slot. He has a season as low as 25% in the slot. I'm curious on like Brock Bowers. I think his snaps are at like half are in the slot. I imagine there's gonna be a lot of, there's a lot of formations where you can have Bowers in the slot and then also Bech on the other side. I'm curious kind of how you see those two skill sets meshing.
Yeah, 43.7% snaps in the slot for Brock Bowers last year. This is not like an anti-Brock Bowers thing, but like most NFL offenses do, like the tight end is not the first read in the concept. That's actually pretty rare for a tight end to have 153 targets, 30 more than anybody else on his, or 20 more than anyone else on his team. That's a testament to how damn good at football Brock Bowers is. It's also a testament to, there were not a lot of target earners in that offense other than Jacoby Myers, so who had 129 targets last season. That's not to say that Bowers like is overrated or anything like that. Just conceptually, there's a lot of times like where that is an outlier situation. Now, from an alignment standpoint, I do think the fact that they're going to use a lot of condensed formations, and NFL offenses are using more condensed formations now, which like guys are closer to the line of scrimmage. They're more packed in. It does make some of this like positional designation stuff, like who's the slot, who's the flanker, who's outside, who's in the slot. It kind of erases those concerns a little bit. Like there are a lot of times last year where Cooper Kupp is an outside receiver for the LA Rams, but he's still essentially running the same route tree that he would in the years where he was the exclusive primary slot guy. So that stuff can be worked around. I would imagine that Chip Kelly is going to do a lot of that, but they're going to run a lot of like quick in-breaking routes with all of these guys. And I think Bech and Bowers will mesh really well on those type of plays.
Yeah, it seems like they're going to work off each other. And I will say too, in terms of out of the slot, which I found interesting, it's like Bowers is good from the slot. Don't get me wrong, of course. I'm not calling him overrated, like you said. Like he's an amazing tight end, but I think it is worth mentioning. I just wanted to check right now to see what the numbers were. If you sort by yards per out run out of the slot among tight ends and wide receivers, he's at like 30th at 1.84. Yards per out run. Of course, quarterback play wasn't great. You'd like more, but I think it also is almost that Evan Ingram aspect of like Evan Ingram's good, but you don't want to build your offense out of slot tight end targets. So I think, Chip Kelly will find a way for them to work off of each other, be a little bit more multiple. And I think the efficiency probably, bounces back because of that.
Yeah.
And Geno's not bad.
No, and Geno's good. And like, I think he actually, like these run after catch players, which Bowers and Jack Bech are, it's a really good fit there. He actually didn't play with a lot of guys like that in Seattle. Like DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett are pure vertical guys, whereas Geno, I think, is really good about accurately getting the ball out in time and giving guys room to run after the catch. That's good for Bowers. It's good for Bech. And just your point on the tight end, like this is what we call the Dalton Kincaid corollary here, that the idea that your slot receiver is going to be your tight end, it's cool in theory because you think like, oh man, defenses aren't going to know what to do with us. Like they're going to line up in base, and then like we're going to just absolutely smoke them with our tight end, who's our slot receiver. Well, when defenses know you're going to do that, they'll just put your nickel corner on, their nickel corner on your slot receiver that's the tight end, and usually that's not an advantageous matchup. And then so what's better is just actually having a really good slot receiver who can actually get open quickly against man coverage, which the Bills have that in Khalil Shakir. Like that's what ends up happening to these tight ends. So the more work that Bowers can get from the inline tight end position, I think is actually better for him than being some sort of mismatch across the formation.
I agree. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I think that he was over like a 2 yards per out run in the season. So I think that he's probably more efficient not from the slot. But let's get into the second wide receiver. We're going a little bit deeper here. Who do you got next?
Yeah, next I've got Tory Horton from Colorado State, now with the Seattle Seahawks. Tory Horton, it was obviously always a risk that he would fall in the draft because he's coming off an injury, kind of out of sight, out of mind. I believe I was talking with somebody from Seattle that it was an LCL and a hamstring injury that ended his season. It wasn't like an ACL tear or something like that. But again, he's a little out of sight, a little out of mind, but he's a really good prospect, man. Super fun player who has a 94th percentile success rate versus press. Obviously, that's at a lower level, but he showed, I think, really good release moves getting off the line of scrimmage. 72% success rate versus man, 81.4 against zone. Really separates well, and he separates on like downfield routes extremely well. Out routes, dig routes, post routes, but he can also get open quickly on slants and things of that nature. So he really strikes me as somebody that sticks out in that Seahawks wide receiver room, right? Like they've got a lot of, the slot heavy guys. I think JSN can play flanker. He's always been a man coverage beater, so I'm not concerned with him playing more outside. Cooper Kupp at this point in his career, if he's even going to be a useful player for Seattle, which I do think it's an if, he is somebody who needs to play in the slot. So the fact that he stands out in this wide receiver room, if he can earn some snaps ahead of Marquez Valdez-Scantling, like we might be talking about an early career perimeter threat for Seattle. So really like the landing spot for Tory Horton and was a big fan of him as a prospect.
Yeah, I love to hear that because he's someone that actually pops in my spreadsheets. Like he's for me, he's the highest graded day 3 wide receiver. Because he honestly, when you start to adjust for, teammate strength, all of that, he popped in Nevada, man. Like Romeo Doubs was there, Cole Turner was there, and Tory Horton was still a real piece of that offense. Of course, it's like Cole Turner. It's nothing crazy, but we're talking 2 NFL receivers. Right. And you're talking on a 7-2 Nevada team who we just talked about. Big 12's a little bit weaker. I think we sometimes underrate the group, or, like I don't know if Nevada's at group of 5, but, like Mountain West teams, all of that, West, where these teams are almost interchangeable with kind of the bottom of Big 12 or the bottom of the old Pac-12. Like this was a good team that year. They had Carson Strong at quarterback. And then of course, the 2 pretty good seasons at Colorado State. So I'm happy to hear that because I was curious if, they don't really have a perimeter threat that they can rely on. It's really just a matter of him getting out there and getting a chance early.
Yeah, and as long as he's healthy, I think he should get that chance early. So he's definitely my favorite. Same with me. Like among guys that went on day 3, he was easily my highest ranked player, and he mostly fell because of injuries. And I think had he come out last year, had he been healthy throughout the course of the season, I think he would have been like a 2nd round pick or something like that. So that's where I just on film had him kind of ranked. So I think Seattle really got themselves a steal with this pick.
Yeah, I love to hear that because I think the big decision point, and we're talking round 3 of rookie drafts, is like him versus Io Manor on like who you want to take a stab on in terms of these day 3 receivers. And I know, the Titans look wide open. They bring in Cam Ward, but they're these players that are early declares and then they fall in the draft and like they look really clean. And Io Manor looks kind of like a worse like from a numbers perspective, like a worse version of like Troy Franklin. You're like hoping for Gabe Davis in terms of guys who look like that. But a lot of times like these guys just end up being Seth Williams, that's kind of the bucket he fell in.
Yeah, that's brutal. I do think Io Manor has some good early opportunity because he's an X receiver, and you just look at the Tennessee Titans depth chart, like they're obviously just wide open period, but he stands out as probably the only guy that can play X there because I think Calvin Ridley at this point is a guy you want to play mostly at flanker. You want to move around. They did that a lot with him last year, especially early on when DeAndre Hopkins was there and he was their X receiver. Traylon Burks can't play X, and I don't even know if Traylon Burks can play period. And then, the other receiver they drafted in the 4th round, Chimere Dike, he is like definitely not an X, another guy that they want to move around the formation. So Io Manor does have some early opportunity, but I just much prefer Tory Horton as a player.
Yeah, and I think the success rates stay the same, where he's like 90th percentile versus press, which to me speaks to kind of what his skill set is. But what do you got as your next receiver?
Yeah, next one, let's go with the 2nd receiver that the Houston Texans drafted. That is Jaylin Noel. I will say for Jaden Higgins, who kind of had a bit of a disastrous route chart in reception perception, he's a solid zone beater and somebody that basically I just don't think could play X. Like, I don't care that he's 6'4". I don't care that he, is over 210 pounds, that he runs a 4.4. He doesn't play like Nico Collins. And that's good, though, that he went to the Houston Texans, that they have an X receiver. Like, I think this is a landing spot where Jaden Higgins can actually find some success. It's not akin I don't think what happened to Keon Coleman last year is going to happen to Jaden Higgins, where he just gets profiled as a pure X receiver. Brandon Beane's out there right now this year talking about, I need Keon Coleman to step up and be a starting level X receiver. I'm like, well, he probably can't. He can't separate at that level. He's just never. I don't think that's ever going to happen. So, not a good, that's a good thing for Jaden Higgins. I do like this landing spot for him, but I just liked Jaylin Noel a lot more as a prospect. Gets open down the field, has a success rate versus man coverage in the same ballpark as Ladd McConkey, another guy that people thought was a slot only player, but showed he actually had a higher yards per route run from the outside than in the slot in his first year in Ladd McConkey. And I think Jaylin Noel's another guy that can play outside. He can be a vertical slot presence. It's actually funny. I compared his reception perception profile to Josh Downs. They both went at 79th overall in their respective drafts, which was criminal for Downs, who outproduced a bunch of dudes that went ahead of him. And I think Jaylin Noel's going to do the same. It's just classic NFL sizeism at the receiver position. Noel's actually significantly bigger than Downs. So I just think he's a really good player. I think he's going to immediately step in and run some of those routes that Tank Dell ran, like deep vertical outbreakers. I would not be surprised if he ends up being the more productive Texans receiver of the two. And obviously, even though he went later in the draft.
I like that take a lot. And this was actually one of the guys I wrote down I wanted to pick your brain on because, like you said, the big issue with Jaden Higgins was separation. Can he get a front office that's smart enough to not shove him at X? Because, my spreadsheets see him and they start saying, oh, is he Cortland Sutton? Is he Kenny Galladay?
Right.
Is he these big X wide receiver jump ball specialist type of guys? And it seems like that's not really his build. But you now have this issue where I think, one, this GM with Caserio, he has shown some, right? Like, I think Tank Dell was he was like a lot of slot in college. Once he got to the NFL, it seems like they pushed him outside. You're saying that could be the case with Noel. I'm just curious how these puzzle pieces fit, because now we're in a spot where we would like Jaden Higgins to be a big slot, but they already have Christian Kirk, who I think is still a good receiver, but at least he's a slot only guy. Then you have Jaylin Noel, who also profiles as a slot guy. Does Jaden Higgins fit in this more like flanker, like almost like Robert Woods role? And obviously this is all speculation. Like, we have no clue how this is going to shake out, but I'm just curious how you see these puzzle pieces, like, fitting in. Like, is this a good spot for Higgins where you think there's more? Of course, Nico Collins is there. So I think sort of, yeah, but I'm curious, like, kind of how you see with Christian Kirk, Noel, and Higgins, kind of how things shake out.
Yeah, I liked the Christian Kirk trade at the time, but let's not forget they traded a 2026 seventh rounder to get him, just basically because the news got out that the Jags were going to cut him, and they're like, hey, we'll just take him for a 2026 seventh rounder. But he might not even be a big part of this team this year if he gets to camp and the young guys are just better than him. I do think that's possible. It's a sneaky, like, I wouldn't say it's a deep's not the right name, not the right word for it, but they got a lot of names in that wide receiver room because Xavier Hutchinson's there, and I actually think Jaden Higgins is just a better version of Xavier Hutchinson. And I know that sounds horrible because it's not like Hutchinson's been somebody that we're trying to start in our fantasy teams, but he's been like kind of a useful player for the Texans. And I actually think that some of the usage that they've given him as kind of a close to the line flanker. Again, we talk about those condensed formations that kind of blur the line between slot and outside. The Texans have already done that a little bit, and I think they will do that much better under new offensive coordinator Nick Caley, who comes from the Rams last year. He has background with the Patriots offensive coaching staff. Again, like I think what'll happen a lot is Nico Collins is going to be that farthest, like way out of the formation boundary player, because he can beat press man coverage at an elite capital E level. So we can trust him to do everything. And then, we'll work Jaden Higgins and Jaylin Noel in tandem. Like, they'll be stacked, bunched close to each other, switch releases, all that stuff to put guys in conflict. You need timing and chemistry to do that. These guys already have that. They've played together. So I wouldn't worry too much about like who's going to take more. I honestly wouldn't be surprised if it's like one guy is 55% in the slot and one guy is 45% in the slot. It might be very close there. And I think they can just still put defenses in conflict and get both guys the free releases that they need, because neither can really play X receiver.
Actually, that's a really good note, because like for me, I was getting hung up on like, well, how are they going to fit this guy in the slot? Because he has to be in this sort of like big slot role. But like you're saying, it's really more so we didn't want him to go to a team that had a clear hole at X, because then,
Correct.
like the Keon Coleman, he gets pigeonholed in there. So it's less about, is the slot open? And it's more about, is there a, good X wide receiver like there is with Nico Collins? So that's actually pretty fun. I think that's going to be, now they're hoarding these Iowa State receivers. We'll see what happens. But let's get let's get to your next must draft receiver.
Yeah, this one, like if we're talking about guys, you must draft this player. You must draft Kyle Williams. Like if you're looking at my dynasty wide receiver rankings on receptionperception.com, based on like early ADP I've seen, it's going to be kind of screaming out to you that I'm ahead of consensus on Kyle Williams. Look, I liked what the famous last words here, because I liked what the Patriots did in the draft last year at wide receiver, but it ended up being a big swing and a miss, which some of that is definitely on the players. I mean, Jaylin Polk quite literally dropped his opportunities last year, but they also, from a coaching standpoint, completely set him up to fail, because I don't know if we talked about Jaylin Polk at all last year, but he was a kind of big slot, like off the line of scrimmage flanker player, and they stuck him out at X receiver and had him run vertical routes. It's like, you're having the guy that runs like a 4-5 and never played X, like play X. Like, of course he can't play there. Like there's no shock in that. So I think this coaching staff with Josh McDaniels and kind of the whole Mike Vrabel cohort of it are going to really know what to do with young players. We'll see if they get anything out of Polk. We'll see Javon Baker's like a pure dart there. We'll see if those guys actually make an impact. But I think Kyle Williams is going to make an impact, man, because this guy is a better prospect than either one of those two players last year. 82nd percentile success rate versus press, 73.3% against man. Despite the smaller frame, like I think he can line up outside. He gets easy separation on curls, slants, flats, comebacks, out routes. Like a lot of these just target accumulating routes, he's going to quickly get himself open on, very similar to like how Drake May worked with Josh Downs at UNC. But again, I think this guy can be a pretty perimeter player. And the crazy thing to me, like when I turn on the film to watch Kyle Williams and do the charting, I just couldn't believe how good after the catch he was. Like he just consistently breaks tackles after the catch. He only went down on first contact on 44% of his in-space attempts. Like you get the ball in his hand and he can do something with it. So stands out in a Patriots wide receiver room with guys who don't really win from the outside, don't really beat man coverage, and definitely don't win with the ball in their hands. Like nobody checks all three of those boxes in the Patriots wide receiver room as from a tackle breaking perspective. I mean, Steph Diggs, I think he can, even though he moved inside for the Texans last year, he still shows he can beat man coverage. I think he probably can be a flanker for them, but honestly, I think Kyle Williams is pretty similar to Stephon Diggs early in his career. So maybe it's like kind of an understudy season. And by year 2, he's really ready to step up as the number one in this offense.
Yeah, that's all sweet. Like I hear the film guys talk about Kyle Williams. It gets me juiced. I know like Hayden and Josh Norris, they had him as like a top 6 guy before the draft. Yeah. And his biggest issue for me was I just didn't know where he was going to get drafted, right? Like there are people saying as high as like 35, people saying, late day 3, we'll see what happens. But he goes round 3, which isn't a death sentence. And then I like, I'm big on Drake May. So any person that can be the wide receiver one to Drake May, to me, that's exciting. I like where this offense is going to, right? They get Trevion Henderson, they get Campbell at offensive line. And I know you interacted with it the other day, but I did want to share the stat of wide receivers with a receiving yards per team pass attempt of 2 or better in their first season of college. He actually had a sneaky good year. It was UNLV his first year. He averaged 70 yards per game. And like I want early season production, which is rare for a guy who stays in school as long as he did. And these guys are Josh Reynolds, Xavier Worthy, Rondale Moore, Corey Davis, Calvin Ridley, Marquise Brown, Kyle Williams, Christian Kirk, Rashad Bateman, Jaden Reed. And then you, of course, saw people were like, that's not even a good list to be a part of. It's like, man, if I can get a range of, Xavier Worthy, Calvin Ridley, Marquise Brown, Christian Kirk, Jaden Reed in the late second of my rookie draft from a round 3 receiver, that's like a huge win. Like, because a lot of these names do nothing. Like, remember Malachi Corley last year, Roman Wilson. Yeah. There's a lot of these guys you can sell yourself on, but like the round 3 hit rate is very low.
Dude, people are spoiled effing rotten right now at the wide receiver positions. Yeah. Like, and look, I love obviously the Dynasty community. I love people that subscribe to my site to play Dynasty, of course. But this, like, if he's not a difference maker, I don't care about him. Like, come on, man! Like, there's so many good wideouts in the league, and like, you just gotta, you can get peak seasons from guys like that if you just get them in the right situation. Yeah, Jaden Reed's a perfect example that. It feels like Jaden Reed went from, oh man, what a nice find, in your dynasty rookie draft, to people are pissed about Jaden Reed now because of the usage in his second season. He's kind of gotten stuck. It's like, yeah, sometimes like guys just get stuck at a certain level and that's who they are. That doesn't mean that he was a bad draft pick by the Packers or he's a bad player. It's just, this is his maximum level. And maybe not. Like, I do think there's potentially another level for Jaden Reed, but he might just be here, which is fine. Yeah, you get that at Kyle Williams in your rookie draft. I think you can't really be too pissed about it.
Yeah, and like just looking at like Christian Kirk's, seasons, his peak season 14.2 points per game as the wide receiver 18. In these dynasty leagues, where you're starting 3 wide receivers, probably like another 2 or 3 flexes, you take that from your second round rookie pick. So it is very funny, man. Like any list you put out there, like it has to have Justin Jefferson in it, it has to have all these hits, and it's like at a certain point you got to be real with like the second round of rookie drafts. It's not going to be all sunshine and rainbows, especially this year, where I think Kyle Williams is the perfect pick. Just to kind of get into kind of like the market version of this, is just the late second is brutal. Like once you get past like Scatabo, you have like 2 in, like we're talking day 3 running backs there, which we can look, the hit rates there aren't great. And then once we're out of round 2 receivers, you're looking at not a ton, right? You're kind of measuring like Dylan Sampson round 4 to the Browns, or Kyle Williams, who has like a real chance to be the first target in his offense. There's a lot of these film, like I actually I made a video the other day just making a comps list for my model. And like not to get you too excited here, Matt. One of the comps that came out for him, and I don't know if play styles match up here, but Deontay Johnson's one that pops as someone that produced early, older prospect, goes round 3, but looks pretty good on paper.
That's so funny that you said that, because I was just out in LA for doing the live draft shows with Yahoo. And while I was out there, James Coe and I, who works with me at Reception Perception, we got together and did like an in-person show that's going to get chopped up and put on my YouTube channel that people could check out, where we did a breakdown on each player that was drafted in day 1 and day 2. And at some point during the Kyle Williams breakdown, James brought up Deontay Johnson, and he's like, we kind of ended up saying, like, is Kyle Williams Deontay Johnson, but with a plan after the catch? Because both these guys are smaller. Like Deontay is 5'10" and 183 pounds, actually smaller than Kyle Williams, and ran a slower 40. But Deontay would do that thing where he'd get the ball and then he'd like hop backwards. He'd never just run downhill. That's the difference, where Kyle Williams get the ball in his hands and he goes, he breaks tackle with aggression. So it's like Kyle Williams might be Deontay Johnson with a plan after the catch. Which is, I think, one of his biggest issues as a just full field, like actually being a number 1 wide receiver. He never was a good after catch player. So it's just funny you mentioned that, because we make that same comp in our Deontay Johnson, or in our Kyle Williams video.
Yeah, he's got that like I remember the tweets, people thought that Calvin Ridley was like throwing games on purpose, because it's after the catch, like he would like go backwards to get out of bounds and just run away from contact, which I don't blame those guys. They're weighing in at 180 and they got to get tackled by the guys on defense. But I think we got one more must draft wide receiver here. Who's at the end of this list for you?
Yeah, it's like calling this guy must draft. I don't know if I feel must draft, but probably a player that I was really, borderline obsessed with in the process leading up to the draft was Isaac Teslaa out of Arkansas. And the reason that I had such a fascination with this guy was, number one, he is a wing T quarterback in high school. So he's a new wide receiver. Then he goes and plays at Hillsdale College. I'm sure you've got all the stats on Hillsdale College over there, Rob. He absolutely just obliterates Hillsdale College. He's incredible at Hillsdale College. Then he transfers to Arkansas, does basically nothing. Under 900 receiving yards in his 2 seasons there combined. But then he measures in at 6'4", just under 6'4", 214 at the NFL Scouting Combine, and he just smokes it. He has like athletic comparables to Rome Odunze, Allen Robinson, Andre Johnson, Javon Walker. But he was a slot-only, completely not producing receiver at Arkansas. But that athletic profile is so fascinating. So I was like, I got to chart this guy, which was great because he doesn't get a lot of consistent playing time. So some of these games really went quick. I love that. If I can get a cut up on this guy that's 12 minutes charting a full game, let's go, baby. We're saving time. So knocked out a full profile on Isaac Teslaa, and there's some really interesting indicators there. 28% of his sampled snaps outside. So like I said, mostly slot, a little bit in the backfield, mostly off the line of scrimmage. 62nd percentile success rate versus zone coverage, which is actually pretty good. Now he doesn't get a lot of reps against press coverage, just 3.7% of his charted routes. So really, is this a guy that can play X receiver? I don't know, but he's built like an X receiver. And then you look at his best routes. it's like slant routes and verticals, like posts, 9, corner, out. So he kind of has the route tree of an X receiver. He kind of has the build of an X receiver, but he was almost exclusively a slot. So, like, who is Isaac Teslaa? By the way, pretty good with the ball in his hands, shows natural instincts in terms of run after catch. He catches just about everything. Rarely, he actually didn't just not drop a pass in his reception perception sample. He never dropped a pass during his time at Arkansas, and he shows like good ball skills, tracks it well, shields defenders at the catch point. So I think there's something here, to the point, Ron, that I was like, oh yeah, I'd throw a day 3 draft pick at Isaac Teslaa. Why not? And then the Lions, who just don't give a shit about anything, trade 2 future thirds to take him at 70th overall. Did not see that one coming, which I think makes him even more fascinating. So, like I said, there's something here. I'm not sure what it is. I'm not sure how to project him on an offense that also has Amon-Ra St. Brown. That's a little difficult. But man, there's something interesting with this Teslaa guy. I'm just not quite sure what the ceiling is.
I'm in the same boat, but I will be honest, I paid him no mind until after the draft, because honestly, like, I know
I get it.
That's part of what you do. You're looking through the day, but like for me, it's like, okay, you go day 3, unless if you were somebody I liked pre-draft, then I don't know. If I miss on the next Puka Nacua, I miss on the next Puka Nacua, but you know, you can sift through that list and you know, you can find whatever you want. But he's really interesting. Like you said, I built a new revamped wide receiver model over the offseason, and I now actually like chart like his D2 production. Because there's other guys that now, these guys aren't massive hits, but you know, I weight them down so that there's some ding there. But I think it does matter where these guys aren't amazing hits, but I think for the range of Teslaa, you'll take it. But like Josh Reynolds and D.D. Westbrook were the same, where they were just like these JUCO D2 like monsters. And like what Teslaa did, he didn't do it for 5 years straight like Cooper Kupp did, but it's almost Eastern Washington-esque, where he averaged like 120 passing yards per game in an offense that only had 2,200 passing yards total. Like his final year at Hillsdale, he had 1,300 yards and 13 touchdowns on a team with only 2,100 passing yards and 18 total touchdowns. So he was the entire thing. They built the offense out of Teslaa. And of course you'd like him to be productive at Arkansas, but man, like you said, there's something there. And his profile is tricky too, because I have started charting usage on deep slot and screen targets. This is a Scott Barrett stat. 45% of his career production at Arkansas came on deep slot targets and screen. So that is weird, where you're saying he can win on more than that. And I think that's kind of like you said, like the dichotomy of it is to me, you know, 68% of his snaps or routes were out of the slot, but you have Amon-Ra St. Brown there. Do they see a vision of him playing outside? Is like you said, in this more multiple NFL, can they just kind of, you know, have these bunches and clusters to work Teslaa out of? But when you draft a guy 70th overall, like, you're going to use him. So in like the 4th round of rookie drafts, like I never thought I would be in on Isaac Teslaa, but I am as well.
Yeah, and I mean, the Lions last year were really good. They're one of the better screen teams in the league. Now they don't have a ton of like screen production. They're 33rd, I believe. They're 33 like completions last year on screen targets, but the efficiency is really good in terms of yards per completion, 7.9 yards per completion on plays that had a screen in terms of wide receivers or tight ends. Like, they can do that really well in this offense, and I think they will get him some of those kind of layups because he really does show a lot of ability to run after the catch. Like, I'm not surprised that if a team was going to make an aggressive move for this profile, that it was the Detroit Lions and it was Brad Holmes, who just kind of marched to the beat of their own drum. And when they've done that, they've actually had a lot of success. You mentioned Josh Reynolds. He was on this team with the Detroit Lions. He's a Jared Goff guy. So yeah, man, I don't know. I think this does make some sense in terms of like why they're so aggressive for this profile. You know, there's also some talk that they don't want to commit long-term to Jameson Williams, which I would kind of understand. Really good player, but you know, do you really trust him to be a part of your program for the long haul? I think they probably want another prove it year from him. Totally understandable. Like I don't know that Isaac Teslaa gives you what Jameson Williams gives you from a speed perspective. Absolutely not. But very athletic player. Even I mentioned that we're going to have a video on Isaac Teslaa, James and I, on our channel. And he actually said, what if they think he's like their Taysom Hill, because this John Morton's the new offensive coordinator. He's got, he just comes from Denver. He works with Sean Payton. All these guys have worked with Sean Payton. Dan Campbell, that's really where this staff kind of draws its roots. That would maybe be a little weird, but he was a wing T quarterback. Maybe they want to use him in kind of like a hybrid-ish little role. I have no idea, but I do at least think like he's not somebody that because of the production I'm willing to totally cross off my list, which is usually the case.
Yeah, he's, like you said, like I just want to highlight one more time. He is the 29th highest RAS score since 1987. He plays, 70% of his snaps out of the slot, but he is 6'3", 214 pounds, elite agility, elite explosion, 4.4 speed. Like, why not?
He's a freak. He's a freak. It's funny.
10-inch hands. If you care about that, like,
yeah, I mean, and he catches everything. So like that's what's so weird is that Arkansas by the way, Arkansas's leading receiver, actually the leading receiver in the SEC, Andrew Armstrong, went undrafted. And I liked Armstrong's film. I know he's an older player. He's like he's going to turn 25 on Halloween, but I was like, all right, I get it. Like they had a really good receiver. They just kind of built everything through him, and Teslaa just kind of got forgotten about. But yeah, it's one of the weirdest players I've probably ever charted, but certainly a very interesting case.
Now, I do want to get into the section of the show where I just kind of pick your brain on some crowded receiver rooms, how you see team fits. And I think probably one of the more polarizing players of this class is Luther Burden. Mm-hmm. So I did want to pick your brain on kind of how he fits in this crowded receiver room, right? You have Rome Odunze, you have DJ Moore, Colston Loveland is now in the mix as well. You have Ben Johnson kind of like gushing over what Luther Burden is at this press conference. And I will say, I do want to backtrack for a second here before I ask you about Burden. The Teslaa thing, and like probably Horton as well. These are players like, yes, they're must drafts, but we're talking, fourth round, the rookie drafts. Like Teslaa, I think to me, the baseline expectation, like this just kind of popped in my head, is probably like you stash him on your taxi squad. And if we do see that Jameson Williams, he leaves after his 5th year is up, then all of a sudden, year 2 could be wheels up. Like I don't think he's going to come in here and give you, 800 yards as a rookie. So just tempering expectations for a second. As much as we love the player, but with Luther Burden, I'm curious kind of like what your expectation is for how he fits. There's a lot of like, oh, he's going to be the Amon-Ra St. Brown to Ben Johnson. And then there's a lot of he's this year's JSN Odunze where he's buried and he's a brutal pick. To me, I'm all over him. I have him even ahead of Matthew Golden, which I know is definitely I know it's a lack of humility. He's a 2nd round receiver versus Golden. And Golden definitely walks into probably a prettier landing spot. But to me, and I will say, I think this is probably an overall philosophy thing too. I'd like to hear your thoughts on of like landing spot. To me, it matters, but I think like you said, like focusing in on like how these players fit together more so than just like, Brian Thomas is wide receiver 1, Travis Hunter's no longer as sexy to me, right? Where I think there's a little bit more nuance there of like, how do these guys fit in with Travis Hunter and Brian Thomas? You have the third receiver is Brenton Strange, or it's, Parker Washington or Diami Brown. So it's going to be consolidated. You don't have to be the number 1 guy everywhere you go, but this is definitely a little bit tougher with Luther Burden. So I'm curious kind of like how you weigh that versus like the talent. Cause like for me, I just think Burden's really good. And I do think long-term at wide receiver, I just want to bet on that because there's going to be 3 to 4 wide receivers out there, maybe even 5 in a given play. And it's the rare situation where at running back, you have to be the first guy on the depth chart, right? Like guys like Blake Corum last year were dead on impact as a 3rd round pick. But at wide receiver, if you get on the field and the yards per out run pops, and then all of a sudden your route percentage can climb up, and we see that happen all the time where these guys emerge out of nowhere. So I'm curious how you're treating Luther Burden, how you feel about the range of outcomes, and just sort of his fit in this offense. And just honestly, like what you charted overall, because I know a lot of people were kind of out on the 2024 film.
Yeah, for Ben Johnson, just comes out in the press conference, Luther stud. Love that. That's great to see. Luther Burden just in isolation was probably one of the most difficult evaluations in this class because he's like a slot mostly, if not only player, over 80% of his sample snaps in the slot. He faced more zone coverage than any player I've ever charted except one in the course of I'm talking not this class, every prospect I've ever charted. I think off the top of my, actually not off the top of my head, because I've got the sheet up here. The only guy who faced more zone coverage throughout the course of his reception perception sample, it was like Rondale Moore or something like that. So like not a very, very different type of player. But he was an average zone beater, not that good at, like, it was okay. David Bell, actually, excuse me, is the name. David Bell's the only player I've charted with more zone coverage reps than Luther Burden. But weirdly, there's a lot of plays. I mean, it's not a lot because obviously he didn't face that much man coverage, but his man coverage stuff was better to me than his zone coverage beating ability. Like, I don't think he had a natural feel for zone coverage. I think he ran himself into coverage a lot of times, but when he would just get these one-on-one isolated matchups, his 71% success rate versus man, that's a pretty good number. Like, anything over 70% is a guy that we want to bet on. So to me, I found that a little bit confusing because there's kind of like almost, I called him like Bud Light Malik Neighbors, or maybe like really, really, really diet version of Neighbors, kind of flashes in his game because he's great with the ball in his hands, is Luther Burden. Breaks tackles. He's bigger than you think. He's faster than you think when you get him in the open field. So he's really an advantage there. But that man coverage score is a thing where I'm just like, God, I want to bet on this guy. But because I knew there were character concerns and there were work ethic concerns, I was like, oh, he's got to go to the right place. He's got to go to a place where he's going to get pushed. And I think he landed in the perfect spot for that, because Antoine Randall is the wide receiver coach, assistant head coach there now with the Chicago Bears, followed Ben Johnson from Detroit. And Randall, great receiver coach, fun player back in the day. I actually watched a lot of Randall because I grew up in Northern Virginia and he was playing for the Washington team at the time. But really interesting player, wide receiver from quarterback convert. And he was a big part of pushing Jameson Williams in Detroit. So that's no guarantee that Luther Burden's going to work, but I love to see that he's with a team that believes in him, a head coach that believes in him, and a wide receiver coach that I know is going to push him and like work on the finer details. So I come out of the draft, even though the landing spot, it's like he's not going to walk right into immediate opportunity. I'm kind of willing to wait on Luther Burden. And by the way, like, we don't know what this team's going to look like in a year from now. Ben Johnson's comments beyond the Luther stud stuff was really telling when he started to talk about, like, you got to come in here and earn it. You got to, work at it. And you've got to, like, he basically said, what we did this weekend should have, lit a candle under certain people. You watched the Bears last year. It's not too hard to see who he's talking about in terms of certain people. And you look at where they drafted positions. They drafted a tight end. I don't think Cole Kmet has played up to his contract. The DJ Moore stuff last year, extremely troubling from a we got to work at it type situation. So again, I think is he buried this year? Potentially, but I actually think DJ Moore is a good long-term like ceiling comparison for Luther Burden. So I'm really interested to see how this ends up working out because I do think he landed in the right spot for him.
Yeah, I love to hear that. And the Antoine Randall thing is a great, sort of like tie in to, I think that was the play in like Thanksgiving when like Jameson Williams like pulled someone's face mask and like Randall like scolded him on the sideline.
Right,
which is hilarious.
Yeah, exactly.
Like this no nonsense kind of dude. And I think Burden and Jameson Williams went to the same high school in like St. Louis. So there's some connections there. I mean, when you start to like say, if we're talking like sort of a hybrid between like Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jameson Williams at his high end in terms of like what his role could be, out of the slot and sort of some, gadget work, and it gets exciting. Like you said too, we were talking about it pre-show, but like the QB school, I would watch him break down the Chicago Bears film. And there's a lot of like, DJ Moore had the clip where mid play, he steps out of bounds and he just like, walks to the bench and just sits down. Of course, the entire thing was dysfunctional. We've seen DJ Moore at his peak, like 1,300 yards, like 8 touchdowns with Justin Fields, looks amazing. But I'm sure Ben Johnson's going back watching this film. He's like I don't like that, long term, like DJ Moore could be out of there. So we've also seen too, these wide receivers like JSN, like Odunze, who got buried. The market did give him a mulligan. Or even this year, Rome Odunze is still a 4 or 5, round startup pick. JSN last year was still like a 5th, 6th round startup pick. These guys hold value. If you can show any flashes early, I'll be excited about it. I did want to ask, so the other side of that coin, I think that the big decision point is Luther Burden versus Matthew Golden. I'm curious where you're at on Golden, because Golden's so difficult for me. Because I try to, like I said, I try to have some humility here with the spreadsheets. But with Golden, it's so tough because I understand the film guys like him. He's a first rounder. Steve Smith has him wide receiver 1. I'm sure there are plenty of NFL teams that had him wide receiver 1 for his separation ability. But that's tough. Like, you're selling me on that when he didn't really produce a ton. His entire people forget, like, it was Isaiah Bond until the final 5 weeks of the season for Texas in terms of like best receiver in that offense, in terms of who is going to go highest in the NFL draft. And then Golden has a great stretch. So he's like a late riser. He has like a 4-game stretch that he somehow parlayed into a first-round NFL salary, which honestly, good on him. But I'm curious because I look at his reception perception and I'm like this is sort of what it was with Rome Odunze last year, where he's not going to pop in the spreadsheets, but I see reception perception. I see, he goes top 10 in the NFL draft. I see these guys like Daniel Jeremiah gushing over him. I'm like, you know what? Fine. I'll step away. I'll say, okay, he's not an early declare. He doesn't look pretty in my spreadsheets, but fine. But with Matthew Golden, I have such a hard time with that because compared to all these other round 1 receivers, like his production is so much below them. And then also it seems hit or miss on like how much he's actually getting open and what his separation looks like. So I'm curious how you are, handling that, because it's like that should be his ace, and it doesn't seem like it's super strong.
Yeah, that's a great way of saying it. And like number one, the Packers taking him where they did too. That's kind of the range of the draft I thought he should go. I have him ranked in a group of guys. I had Luther Burden ahead of him. I had Emeka Egbuka and McMillan and Hunter, obviously, all ahead of him. So I had him kind of in my stacked rankings on the site, ranked in a range where it's like, yeah, he should be a late first, very early second round player. And, that's in the same range of guys like Zay Flowers and Jordan Addison, like who have gone in that range of the draft. So I think Golden actually ended up, despite the like top 12 hype, he's going to Dallas, top 12. I think he actually fell to the appropriate range to the Green Bay Packers, kind of in the 20s. That's totally fine to me. I also think like he projects well to what they need. People keep harping on like, oh, they need a number 1 receiver. Okay. Easier said than done, folks. Like if everybody could just find a number 1 receiver, that'd be great, but you can't. But what they did need was verticality and somebody that could win at the catch point, which Matthew Golden definitely has really good contested catch ability. And you've got like the separation down the field. So that's what I like about him. I think he brings that, but he does profile more as a number 2 than a number 1 to me. The success rate for zone is really high, 77th percentile, but the man coverage stuff was just kind of okay. Pretty similar to like Xavier Worthy last year. But he was a better zone beater and a better contested catch player and better after the catch as well. So I did like him more than I liked Xavier Worthy last year, who I thought was an okay prospect. But yeah, I mean, I like him, but I'm not in love with him, if that makes sense. And I think this landing spot in Green Bay is a little tricky just because they were 32nd in neutral pass rate last year. I still think this room is a little crowded, even if he eventually emerges as the number 1, quote unquote, like he's the highest targeted player on this team. Jaden Reed is still there. I basically think they're like replacing Christian Watson with Matthew Golden, and I think Matthew Golden's gonna be way better than Christian Watson, but he's mostly gonna win down the field. He's gonna be like a contested catch player and somebody they get like on stretch routes and stuff like that. So I'm definitely interested in him from an NFL perspective. I think he landed in a great spot, and he brings tactically what this team and most teams need in terms of ability to stretch the field, but like earning targets and stuff, I think that will be interesting to sort of track just in terms of how much opportunity he can get. So like the player, like the landing spot. I don't know if I love either.
Yeah. And I think it's important to note is like, obviously they don't have a 1 already there. That's like this amazing receiver, but this is a weird spot. Like you said, they're run heavy. They're going to be efficient, but they're run heavy. And then also you look last year, their highest route percentage guys was Dobbs at 83%, then Reed at 73%, then Wicks at 57%. And they rotate these guys. Like, for example, I'm not saying any of these guys are Jamar Chase, but Jamar Chase 98% last year. So if you're a top guy, you'd like to be in that 90% plus, but they seem very set on rotating these guys. And I will say, you have Golden ahead of Burden post draft. It's a bit of a bummer to look over. Like I sort of felt like we were all in on this Burden train. Not saying that you weren't like loud and outspoken as a Burden guy. It was really more so, I'll call him J.J. Zacharyson, good friend of mine. Josh Norris, good friend of mine. These guys, had Burden like wide receiver 3 pre-draft. And then all of a sudden, like you said, we thought Golden would go round 1, potentially later round 1. We thought Burden would go early round 2. Then we get the landing spots, we get the draft capital. And now I'm looking around and I'm like the only one that's like, I'll hold the torch for Luther Burden. But I did want to pick your brain on another player too. that I don't even know what to make of, man. Did you get around to charting Savion Williams? I assume yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Who is this guy? Like, this is I'm looking at his. Let me lead off with a stat here for a second, because this is ridiculous. In my entire database of wide receivers with 10 or more contested catches, he is at the top of this list, converting 75% of his jump balls. But then I'm seeing cut-ups where Josh and Hayden do these like cool like 10-minute videos on these prospects, and he's like, the hands like aren't amazing, but then he's like he has like 99 spectacular catch on Madden, but then also like 65 catching overall, you know? So I'm curious, like, what does he look like? It seems like they're sort of set on him playing wide receiver. Like, of course we want the Cordarrelle Patterson stuff. So, I mean, how does he fit in this? This is another guy, right? And like Bo Melton can play too. You can go down the list. So, where are you at on Savion Williams?
God, I kind of keep forgetting they drafted Savion Williams, and maybe it's just because I want to. I want to forget. The only thing I want out of this Savion Williams pick is I want them to give him all the receiver rushing stuff and take that shit away from Jayden Reed. Like, let's just let Jayden Reed be a real receiver, because I think he can do it. But anyways, in terms of Savion Williams, 46.4% success rate versus man coverage. That's not shouldn't be a shock that that's not very good. That's in like the Wan'Dale Robinson zone, which, by the way, I think like that's who Wan'Dale Robinson is. He's not a real receiver, but he's a pure gadget guy. That's what I think. I don't think he can at this point from a route running perspective. He's just not at like quote real receiver level. But if you're going to be a gadget guy, which I think he will have to be, you got to also reliably catch the football, which, as you mentioned, I also had a great contested catch rate for him. Very little drops over the course. Like, I liked his hands. I liked his ability to shield defenders at the catch point and use his hands. And, he's definitely tough to tackle, and he's got good vision after the catch. If you're going to be that gadget guy, you got to reliably catch football, or otherwise you're Kadarius Toney. Like, why are we dialing up plays for you and like scheming things for you when you can't even get the football in your hands, So I think that's at least interesting. That's the role I would use him in. And I'm pretty skeptical of him actually being a real wideout.
Yeah. I mean, we're kind of hoping that, like, I would say the best thing you can do with Savion Williams is you draft him, you put him on the taxi squad, and then you hope that LaFleur gives up and says, okay, he's going to be, Ty Montgomery, Cordarrelle Patterson, name whoever you want. So that's what you're hoping for. But I was curious, like, he is just, 600 yards in his final year, 51 carries though. And then I have two more spots I want to pick your brain on. The first one being very similar to Burden, where Egbuka comes in. I assume, did you also have Egbuka kind of ahead of Burden and Golden pre-draft?
Yes. Yep.
I guess what are you seeing in terms of like how you're valuing him in Dynasty? I assume that he's high end enough that you'd prefer him to Golden. Yeah. And then, you have Evans there, but he's getting older. You have Godwin coming off like a major injury. I guess, like, how do you see his fit? And I will say this is, outside of rookie stuff, but I am curious too. If you look at the splits of on-off of Godwin in the slot and out of the slot, it's pretty tough. And that was kind of the reason to be in last year, right? Liam Cohen comes in, says we're going to use Chris Godwin out of the slot. They do it. He crushes. And now we have kind of a little bit of a speed bump here where when Godwin is healthy and ready to go, he's probably splitting slot snaps with Egbuka. So I'm curious how you sort of see that, shaken up.
Yeah, I think Godwin can play a little bit outside. Like, he's always been a good man coverage beater, but is definitely maximized as a weapon in the slot because he's so good with the ball in his hands, and it's just easier to get the ball in his hands if he's a slot player. So I think that's where like the efficiency part of it comes in, and why he does profile better as a slot producer. I think tactically he can certainly line up a little bit outside for you. And I do kind of feel honestly the same way with Emeka Egbuka. Like, when that pick happened, it was probably the most surprising pick of the first round to me, not because I didn't love the player, because I do love the player. Great prospect. It just, like, if wide receiver was going to be the pick for the Bucs in the first round, I thought they'd go with like a Matthew Golden type just to get like a speed threat in there, because really, if Emeka Egbuka is going to hit his ceiling, he probably becomes Chris Godwin, and Chris Godwin is on this Bucs team. So it's a little tough to split. And they just signed him to an extension. I know he's like a Bucs lifer. They love him there. He's like high character, which, by the way, So is Emeka Egbuka, like high character, effort, works hard. He would have, not only was he one of the best success rate versus zone players in this class, he actually would have led all of the 2024 prospects in success rate versus zone coverage. So better than Neighbors, better than Odunze, better than Marvin Harrison. Now, he was not in any of those guys' category in terms of his ability to be man coverage, which is probably why you would prefer him to be a slot player. But they do a lot of condensed formation stuff. They promoted passing game coordinator Josh Grizzard to the offensive coordinator job. So you think they're going to keep a lot of things conceptually the same there. But, it is a risk losing Liam Cohen. Do a lot of condensed formation stuff. And Emeka Egbuka, just the routes that he runs. And again, James and I did a whole breakdown on this that should be on the channel soon. Just maps perfectly with what Baker Mayfield wants to throw and what he's thrown to Chris Godwin and what he's thrown to Mike Evans over the last couple of years. So I think the pick, like, I'm willing to be patient. If I got to take the L in year one, that's fine. Good player. And this is a good offensive ecosystem. Unlike him, I joked at the top, like, oh, Emeka Egbuka is the Odunze of this year. It kind of is, because he is stuck behind two Pro Bowl receivers who are going to command targets. But one, I think there will be less, let's call it politicking in the room this year in Tampa Bay than there was in Chicago. And this is also a damn good offense. They were top 5 in dropback success rate, top 5 in overall offensive EPA this past season. This should be a good unit. Certainly we could not say that about what happened in Chicago last year.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Like the level of dysfunction is much lower, right? Where like Baker's established, this isn't a rookie quarterback or a rookie coach, and the Bucs at this point have kind of earned it. Where we've now seen Baker produce with Canales and Cohen. He's here to stay. I like the idea of just like throwing weapons at Baker as well. And
yes, 100%.
This is my overarching point of the whole landing spot thing is landing spot matters. And like, we're sort of talking through here of like the scheme and how everything fits, but there's also the scenario where, and I don't want to wish bad on anybody, but there's, of course, me and you, we've seen Allen Robinson come out here and fall flat. We've seen Julio Jones come out here and fall flat. I'm not predicting that for Mike Evans, right? Mike Evans,
yeah, totally.
Most of the time he's going to get 1,000 receiving yards, but there are these outcomes where like Mike Evans is a shell of himself this year. Godwin's major injury is a big deal. And, Egbuka ends the season like rookie year Amon-Ra St. Brown did. Like these are all in the range of outcomes you have to remember before you just kind of like, sort by projectable targets. But I think that's the biggest issue I have with the Dynasty community right now, where it's just like, how does this guy help my team right this very second? And it's like, there's more that goes into that than just
why we play Dynasty and not just redraft, right?
Exactly.
I mean, like 100%. And like fantasy in general is like, chaos is the one theme of the NFL. Chaos will always reign supreme. And how can you benefit from chaos? When I look at the wide receiver position, there's probably not going to be many guys in terms of this guy can benefit from chaos more than Emeka Egbuka. You mentioned Mike Evans. Like I haven't charted Mike Evans yet, but I have charted Chris Godwin. But receivers, it's just the aging curve and the aging cliff. Like to me, there really are no rules. Like guys can be like Allen Robinson, where there's not that sign of decline, but then the second like you see, it's like, oh my God, he just can't play anymore. There are other guys like Keenan Allen, who on the Bears last year, where they kind of just slowly decline, right? Where it's like, okay, he definitely had not Keenan Allen of 2018 or anything like that, but he's not dust. He's still like a useful player for a team. And then there's some guys like Des Bryant where they go from here to here, like fall off a cliff completely. And like Mike Evans could be any one of those three at 32 years old. And if he's one of the lesser inspiring range of outcomes, good news for Emeka Egbuka.
Yeah, exactly. And I have one more spot I want to pick your brain on. Okay. I know you charted him. Tell me about Pat Bryant, man. We got Sean Payton coming out to the podium saying this guy reminds me of Michael Thomas. Illinois receiver Pat Bryant, 4-year guy. And I wanted specifically, I read your write-up on him where it almost similar to Jaden Higgins in a way, where it seems like he's not this pure X despite being a big body receiver. I'm curious kind of how he fits. And it's another situation too, where I think Sutton can kind of play that role similar to what, Nico Collins does. And I guess, he's kind of replacing, Lil Jordan Humphrey or whatever they got going on over there, the Devon Baileys of the world. I'm curious, like, did he pop? Because for me, he's in that same Isaac Teslaa range of like guys that in like the 3rd, 4th round of your rookie draft, if you want to take a flyer, you absolutely can. How are you kind of viewing his range with Denver?
another guy that I did not see going in the third round. But I didn't think RJ Harvey was going to go in the second. Like Sean Payton is at the controls of this team, and he's just going to do whatever he wants. The thing with Pat Bryant is you look at his overall success rates, 50% success rate versus man coverage. That's not that good. 77%, just shy of 77% against zone, which is solid. But that man coverage number can be easily explained when you look at his 9-route success rate. He ran a 9 route on 18.6% of his sampled routes. He had a 27.8% success rate. That is abysmal. That's got to be one of the lowest I've ever charted for a prospect. So that depresses the overall success rate versus man score, because when you look at some of his other routes, dig route's good, curl route, like there's something there in terms of the intermediate area. He also has really good hands, good in contested situations. He breaks tackles after the catch, like kind of a little bit of a nifty player with the ball in his hands. He went down on first contact on just 36.4% of his in-space attempts, broke multiple tackles on 27.3%. The Michael Thomas comparison, all respect to Sean Payton, a little bit much for me. I actually thought the player he reminded me of was another former Broncos receiver in Tim Patrick. So just like a good, rugged player, never probably going to be a fantasy league winner or anything, but Sean Payton loves these type of receivers. Big dudes who win in the intermediate area, tough physical players, can catch everything. It's really not too dissimilar from what they got out of Devon Vele last year is kind of the role I'd imagine for Pat Bryant.
Yeah. So that's like pretty much how I'm treating it as well. Like it's just one of these Sean Payton guys, but every once in a while that guy becomes Michael Thomas or he becomes Marcus Colston. So I don't know. So he's one of the few guys in the NFL you have to kind of respect. And I'll get you out on this. I don't want to put you on the spot, so I'll give you a second to think about it. But any super deep sleeper, I know you mentioned Andrew Armstrong. If this is just a guy, like I know we already went pretty deep with like Tory Horton and everybody, but somebody who's like maybe you could get at the end of your taxi squad. I don't know if they're a UDFA or they just go late day 3, but anybody that you really liked in the pre-draft process that felt like almost UDFA territory that you might stash on a taxi squad or two. That could be maybe this year's Jaylin Coker or somebody.
Yeah, Andrew Armstrong's a really good one to mention. Like I said, he's really good success rate versus press, but he went undrafted. I do love him in that Miami room, hypothetically got on the field because he actually blocks and he's physical. They need that. But since I already mentioned him, I'll give you another one with Keandre Lambert-Smith, day 3 draft pick by the Los Angeles Chargers, who needs speed. He brings speed. 77th percentile wingspan, 4.37 in the 40-yard dash. He uses both. Like he uses that long wingspan and he uses that speed, man. 9 route, 72.7% success rate, post route, 80% success rate, wins on corners, outs. And like he's got something to him from the rest of his route tree, even if the success rate isn't that great. 72.3% success rate versus man overall. Shows an ability to like throttle down and get open pretty quickly. Now he is almost in that like Deontay Johnson corollary where he will just let easy passes clank off his hands, but he makes some fantastic like tight coverage plays where he uses that wingspan when he's got a defender on him. He saw a contested target on 24% of his targets and he caught all of them. It's a mini sample, but still pretty impressive. So I think he actually looks like a player the Chargers need too. Has some size and speed. Whereas Trey Harris is that X receiver, Ladd McConkey's moving all around the formation. I wouldn't be surprised if he gets on the field for this team.
I like that call. Maybe the new era, like Travis Benjamin type, field stretcher.
That's not bad, yeah.
For Justin Herbert. So that's a name I'll definitely tuck away. But I appreciate your time, Matt. I always love bringing you on, talking about the receivers. Let everybody know, where they can find your work, what you have coming out over on Reception Perception.
Yeah, subscribe to the YouTube channel. It's just Matt Harmon, RP. Like I mentioned, all these, there are a bunch of prospect profiles, landing spot reactions are coming out there. ReceptionPerception.com is the info, and you're going to find all this information that we talked about here. All these prospects that we broke down, full profiles, in-depth write-ups, charts, data, and more stuff than you could possibly do with. If you just want the rankings, you can go be a Prime subscriber and you can get the Dynasty rankings there as well. But we also have the year 2 profiles dropping on May 12th. So Roma Dunze, Malik Neighbors, all the way down to Jaylin Coker. All those guys will be charted on the site on May 12th.
Sweet. I'll be excited for that. Of course, I'll have all that linked down below. Matt's Twitter, YouTube, Recessive Perception, all of those profiles. You can find them in the description or pinned at the top of the comments. But if you enjoyed this video, subscribe, leave a like. And I will say as well, I'm probably going to cut into this video at some point. I did start a new Dynasty channel, the RS Dynasty YouTube channel, where this is going to be the last video on the main channel for Dynasty. Moving forward, everything will be on there. So make sure you subscribe to the RS Dynasty channel. But as always, I appreciate you guys watching, and I will see y'all in the next one.
Stones, like this froze, ice cold, ice around my body like I'm